My name is Vivian Rhodes. I'm 36, and for most of my adult life, I've been the one people watched, perfectly put together, unnervingly calm under pressure, with a curated Instagram feed and a reputation for never needing help. I wasn't just respected in my family, I was envied, until the day I overheard what they really thought of me. It happened at my parents' house of all places. A Sunday dinner, roast chicken, Chardonnay, candlelight. My mother's attempt to pretend we were still a family that gathered out of affection rather than obligation. I'd brought my wife, Isabel, her first time at a formal family dinner since our wedding 6 months ago. Everyone had smiled and nodded politely when she arrived, complimented her shoes, asked about her marketing agency. But there was a thin film of condescension in the air, the kind that only women can wield. My sister's smile too tight, my brother's wife overly warm, my mother performing interest without blinking. I should have known something was off. After dessert, I went upstairs to take a work call. I had left my clutch in the guest room and returned for it quietly, my heels muffled by the thick carpet. That's when I heard them, through the crack in the door to the sitting room. "She married up," my sister Liza said. "I mean, come on, you think Vivian would go for someone like that if she wasn't loaded?" A pause, a giggle. "It's not like she's in love. She just finally got tired of being the breadwinner." I froze. "She always acts so high and mighty," Liza continued, "as if we don't see through it." Another voice, my mother's. "Well, maybe it's for the best. At least now she can stop trying to prove something to everyone. She was exhausting to be around before. Always on, always performing." Then the worst part, my younger brother Evan, with a soft laugh. "Think she even told Isabel about the prenup, or does she keep that tucked away like everything else?" It was like the air had been sucked out of the house. I felt myself shrink in place, an expensive ghost clinging to a banister. I'd been wrong. I thought keeping my life perfectly managed would make them admire me, respect me, maybe even include me, but they didn't admire me. They resented me. They didn't think I was strong. They thought I was calculating. They didn't see love in my marriage. They saw strategy. That night, I sat through the rest of dinner without speaking. I smiled when Isabel squeezed my hand. I cleared the dishes like nothing had changed, but everything had, because it wasn't just gossip. It was truth-telling in disguise, and it shattered something I didn't know was fragile. On the drive home, Isabel talked about redecorating our foyer. I nodded, smiled, but my mind kept rewinding. Married up. She's not in love. Tired of being the breadwinner. I'd worked since I was 15, built my own consulting firm from the ground up, bought my first condo by 27, put Evan through rehab, paid off Mom and Dad's second mortgage when they hit financial trouble, gave Liza's son a full college fund as a birthday gift, and they thought I was with Isabel for money? I'd never even used her card, not once. The irony? I'm the one who made her sign the prenup. That night, after Isabel went to bed, I sat at the kitchen island and reread it. 3 pages. Clear terms. Fair. She never even flinched when I asked. "I get it," she'd said, brushing her hair back. "You've worked hard for everything. I'm not here to take anything from you." I remember thinking, she sees me. Finally, someone sees me. And maybe that's why I fell in love with her. Not because she was wealthy, not because she was beautiful, but because she didn't ask me to shrink. She didn't project her insecurities onto my success. She didn't punish me for being a woman with ambition. She just stayed. I couldn't sleep that night, couldn't stop hearing their voices in my head, like a chorus of betrayal. I started scrolling through old photos, holidays, birthdays, group shots where I always stood on the edge, slightly apart, always in control, always the one holding the camera or the check or the burden. How long had they seen me this way? And why had I never noticed? Because I wanted to believe that love, real love, would change their opinion of me? Because I thought marrying someone gentle and kind and generous would soften their perception of me? Or because, deep down, I believed being chosen might finally make me feel like I belonged? The next morning I printed the prenup, 3 copies. I didn't know what I was going to do with them, not yet. But I knew one thing: if they were going to reduce my marriage to a transaction, then they deserved to see the receipt that proved them wrong. I didn't send the prenup right away. For 2 days I let it sit on my desk. 3 stapled copies in a pale blue folder labeled "Personal" in bold letters. I'd glance at it every morning while sipping my coffee, as if it might vanish if I ignored it long enough. But the truth doesn't vanish. It waits. And sometimes it sharpens. By Wednesday, I couldn't keep pretending I was unaffected. Isabel knew something was off. She caught me staring into my second glass of wine that night, silent again during a rerun of a show we used to quote word for word. "Okay," she said gently. "Either you're mentally redesigning the kitchen without telling me, or you're thinking about burning someone's house down." I smiled weakly. She always knew how to soften me without invalidating me. "I heard them," I said. She turned the volume down and gave me her full attention. "Heard who?" "My family, after dinner Sunday, talking about us, about you, about our marriage." Her face didn't change, but her fingers curled slightly around the stem of her wine glass. "What did they say?" I recited it slowly, like a wound being reopened. That I married up, that I wasn't in love, that you were just a way for me to stop working so hard, that I only brought you in because I was tired of carrying everything alone. Silence. Then she asked, "Do you believe any of that?" "No," I said, "but it hurt that they do." She nodded. "Of course it did." I paused, hesitant. "They think you're rich." She laughed, a dry, sharp sound. "I am." I blinked. "I mean," she added quickly, "I have money. I had a good exit from the agency I sold. But that's not the point, Viv. You never asked for any of it. You've paid every dinner bill since our first date. You insisted on splitting the mortgage. You made me sign a prenup." I exhaled, the guilt crawling higher. Maybe that was part of the problem. How? I think maybe part of me wanted to prove to them that I didn't need your money, that I could have a marriage that was clean, fair, unassailable. But even that wasn't enough. They still found a way to make it ugly. Because they're not looking at us, Viv. They're looking at their own projections, their own fears, and resenting me for not sharing them. She reached for my hand. "You don't have to defend yourself to people who've never taken the time to understand you." "But they're my family. That doesn't mean they get to distort your story." The next morning, I sent Liza a text. "Can we meet? Just the 2 of us. Tomorrow." She replied within 5 minutes. "Sure. You okay?" I didn't answer that. We met at a coffee shop in Park Slope, neutral territory, the kind with white tile walls and $9 toast. She arrived 10 minutes late, as always, still wearing her lawyer casual armor, blazer, jeans, low heels, still walking like she owned every room. "Hey," she said, hugging me like nothing was wrong. I didn't hug her back fully. "Thanks for meeting." She nodded, sitting across from me. "You seemed off." I slid the blue folder across the table. She blinked at it. "What's this?" "Read it." She opened it slowly, frowning at the document. Her face changed by the second. Confusion, realization, embarrassment. "I don't understand." "That's the prenup Isabel signed before we got married. Voluntarily, no loopholes, no conditions. If we divorce tomorrow, she walks away with exactly what she came in with. Nothing more." She shut the folder. "Why are you showing me this?" I leaned forward. "Because I heard what you said Sunday. You, Evan, Mom." She froze. I kept going. "I heard you say I married her for money, that I wasn't in love, that I was tired of being the breadwinner and just wanted a shortcut. I heard every word." Liza looked away. "Viv?" "No. I need you to hear this. I worked for everything I have. Every inch of my life was built by staying up late, saying yes when I wanted to say no, solving your problems before mine. And you still managed to turn my marriage, something that actually makes me happy, into a transaction. I didn't mean it like that. Then how did you mean it? She hesitated. It was just venting. Family gossip. You always seem so perfect. So unbothered. It's hard not to feel like you're judging us. That stunned me more than I expected. You think I'm judging you? Aren't you? No. I've been busy trying to prove I wasn't a disappointment. Trying to keep things afloat so Mom wouldn't spiral, or Evan wouldn't relapse, or you wouldn't call me cold. I thought if I just gave enough, did enough, you'd finally accept me. Silence. Her expression softened. I didn't know you felt that way. Well, you never asked. She swallowed. And I never meant for you to hear that. But I did, and now we're here. Liza glanced down at the folder again. I guess I owe you an apology. No, Liza, you owe Isabel one. I didn't expect much to change, but later that week, Isabel found a letter in the mailbox. Handwritten, no return address. Inside, Isabel, I'm sorry for what I said. You didn't deserve that. It came from a place of jealousy and fear, and neither of those are your fault. I hope we can start over one day. Liza Isabel read it once, then again. Wow, she whispered. I sat beside her. It's a start. She looked at me. Do you feel lighter? I considered that. No, not yet, but I feel seen, and that's something. After the letter from Liza, there was a lull. A few awkwardly kind texts from my mother, a forwarded recipe from Evan, like that could stitch over a decade of fractures. Even Isabel seemed cautiously hopeful, her optimism a shade I hadn't worn in a while. But inside me, something was still splintered, not because of what they said, but because of how long I'd pretended not to notice they felt that way. The truth was, I had always been the outsider in my own family, not because they pushed me out, but because I kept building walls and calling them doors. One morning, I sat at the dining table alone, scrolling through old family albums stored on my cloud drive. Photos I'd scanned years ago and organized obsessively, chronologically, by event, by theme. My own private archive of a story I was only beginning to see clearly. Birthday parties, vacations, Thanksgiving spreads. In almost every photo, I was on the edge, holding a tray, checking a list, in motion. I don't remember ever just sitting down. I remember cleaning up while the others played, writing Liza's college essays when she had mono, picking Evan up from a high school party at 2 a.m. after he borrowed Dad's car and dented it into a stop sign. And I remembered how no one ever said thank you. Not really, because they expected it, because that was my role. Vivian, the fixer. Vivian, the composed. Vivian, the reliable daughter who didn't cry when Mom skipped her graduation because of a migraine, or whatever excuse she gave that year. I closed the laptop and sat back, feeling the weight of 1,000 small betrayals I had neatly stacked into a life that looked perfect from the outside. I had been surviving by being useful and calling it love. That night, I told Isabel what I'd realized. I think I spent years believing that if I kept giving, they'd finally love me the way I needed to be loved. But now I see that I gave so much, they forgot I was a person. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "That's what happens when you build a house on obligation instead of trust. You end up alone in a very big, very clean room." I laughed, but it caught in my throat. "Do you think I'm cold?" I asked. "No," she said immediately, "but I think sometimes you mistake control for safety." That one hit deep. Because it was true. I had curated every corner of my life, my wardrobe, my firm, my social media, even my relationship with precision. No chaos, no mess, no surprises. Because mess was dangerous. Mess meant vulnerability, and vulnerability, in my family, had always been a liability. A week later, my mother invited me to brunch. Just her and me. The last time we'd done that, I was 22 and crying into my eggs because she'd told me she didn't understand why I was still single if I was so impressive. I agreed anyway. We met at a French cafe in Midtown, neutral, polished, safe. She arrived late, in a beige trench coat and oversized sunglasses, as if we were meeting to discuss boardroom strategy, not emotional wounds. "Vivienne," she said, leaning in to kiss the air near my cheek. "You look tired. Working too much again?" "I'm not here to talk about work." She blinked, then gave a tight smile. "Of course." We ordered. The server left, and then I said it. "I heard what you said, after dinner." She didn't pretend to misunderstand. She adjusted her napkin. "Your sister has a habit of speaking without thinking." You weren't silent. A long pause. "I didn't say it to hurt you," she said finally. "It was just conversation. About my integrity. About my marriage." "Vivienne," she said gently, patronizingly, "you've always been intense. You overthink everything. You make everything a referendum." "No," I said, my voice steady. "I just finally stopped pretending that your indifference wasn't cutting me open." Her face cracked then, just slightly. A tremble around her mouth, a flicker in her eyes. "I never meant to be indifferent," she said. "You were. I was tired. I was raising 3 children. Your father was useless. I leaned on you because you never broke." "But I did. You just didn't notice." That silenced her. I didn't storm out. I didn't cry. I just paid the check, my default reaction, and walked out into the autumn sun with a strange kind of ache in my chest. It wasn't rage anymore. It was grief. Not just for the mother I wished I'd had, but for the girl I'd been, who kept offering love like a ladder, hoping someone would climb toward her. That weekend, I went to see Evan. He lived in a too-tall apartment with too many empty whiskey bottles for someone who claimed to be sober. He let me in with a shrug, already looking hungover. "I know why you're here," he said. "Then say it," he sighed. "I was being an asshole." "Why?" "Because you're better than me, Viv. You always have been. And it's easier to make jokes than admit I'm embarrassed I still ask you for help." I sat down, letting that hang. "I never wanted you to be embarrassed," I said. "I just wanted you to be okay." "Yeah, but being okay meant being like you, and none of us ever figured out how." That night, I wrote Isabel a letter, not because we were in trouble, because I needed to say thank you, for seeing me before I saw myself, for loving me when I was still performing love like a PowerPoint presentation, for staying. The next morning, she read it in bed beside me and said, "I knew you were in there. You just needed to stop building for everyone else." I smiled. I think I'm finally ready to build something for us. The day I knew something had shifted, I was rearranging the bookshelf in our living room, not to organize, not to impress, just because I wanted to. I was barefoot, hair damp from a shower, holding a copy of The Art of Gathering in one hand and a glass of wine in the other. Isabel walked in from the kitchen, leaned against the doorframe and said, "You look soft today." I raised an eyebrow. "Soft," she nodded. "Not brittle, not bracing, just you." And I realized I'd been softening for weeks, like bread left to rise without pressure. I'd stopped trying to anticipate every need, stopped managing every emotion that wasn't mine. For the first time, my identity wasn't built on usefulness. It was built on presence. That night I called my mother again. "I'd like to invite everyone to dinner," I said. "Not for a celebration, just for a reckoning." She hesitated. "Everyone?" "Yes." She agreed, surprisingly quickly, and that scared me more than if she'd said no. I chose the restaurant carefully, not a flashy place, not too expensive, a cozy, family-run spot with mismatched plates and string lights tangled above the patio. I rented out the back room and told them there'd be 6 of us: me, Isabel, Mom, Liza, Evan, and his girlfriend Jordan, who I knew would show up late but ask smart, piercing questions that no one else had the guts to voice. We arrived early. Isabel held my hand under the table while I watched the door. They came in waves. Liza first, tense but polished. Mom next, already apologizing for her scarf not matching. Evan last, reeking faintly of gum and hangover sweat, Jordan's hand resting protectively on his lower back like she was anchoring him to earth. We made small talk over appetizers, and then I cleared my throat. "There's something I want to say," I began. They all turned, mid-bite. "I know you've had your opinions about my marriage. I know things were said, and I don't want to pretend it didn't hurt. But I also don't want to keep living like the only way to belong here is to shrink." No one interrupted. I've spent most of my life trying to earn space in this family by being useful, by anticipating everyone else's needs and suppressing my own. And I think, somewhere along the way, you started confusing my composure for coldness, my boundaries for distance, my strength for not needing you. Evan looked down at his plate. Liza crossed her arms. My mother's lips parted slightly, but she didn't speak. "I've been trying to manage all of you so you wouldn't abandon me, and you know what? I'm done." Jordan let out a tiny, involuntary of approval. "I love this family," I continued, "but I'm not going to beg for dignity. I'm not going to prove that my marriage is real or that I'm generous, or that I didn't marry up just because you can't imagine someone loving me without needing something in return." My voice broke slightly on that last line. And that was when my mother finally spoke. "You were always the strongest one, Vivian. We leaned on you because we thought you could take it." "Strength doesn't mean bottomless," I said softly. "It doesn't mean I don't bleed." Evan spoke next. "I said those things because I was jealous," he admitted. "I thought you had everything figured out, the money, the love, the perfect house. I wanted to believe it wasn't real." "It's not perfect," I said, "but it's real. And Isabel is the first person who didn't ask me to perform for love. She just chose me, exactly as I was." Liza looked at me then, and for the first time in years, her gaze didn't carry competition or critique. "I'm sorry," she said, "for what I said, for how I've treated you. You made a life I didn't understand, and I punished you for that." I nodded. "Thank you. I think I wanted you to be smaller, so I didn't have to feel like I failed by comparison." "You didn't fail," I said. "You just chose a different path. And maybe you resent me because I never asked permission to take mine." My mother dabbed at her eyes with a cloth napkin. "I wish I'd been better," she said, "but I was tired and angry, and I let that cloud how I saw you." "I know," I said, "and that wasn't absolution. It was acknowledgement." After dinner, no one rushed to leave. We lingered on the patio, sharing dessert, passing stories that hadn't been spoken aloud in years. Liza confessed she'd nearly divorced her husband last year. Evan admitted he was thinking of trying rehab again. Mom whispered, almost ashamed, that sometimes she still cried for hours without knowing why. And for once, I didn't offer solutions. I just listened, not because I'd given up fixing them, but because I no longer needed to. That night, back at home, I told Isabel everything. She lay curled beside me, hair loose, the sleeve of my old college sweatshirt falling off her shoulder. "Did it help?" she asked. "It helped me see them clearly," I said, "and myself." "Do they see you now?" "Maybe," I said, "but more importantly, I do. I still don't think they'll ever understand everything. They'll still forget my birthday one year, still make jokes about how organized I am, like that trait exists in a vacuum, still try to drag me into the old family dance of secrets and silence. But now I have a boundary wrapped in clarity. Now I know love that doesn't ask me to audition. Now I know what it means to be chosen, not for my usefulness, but for my presence. It's been 9 months since that dinner. 9 months since I sat across from the people I once would have bled for and finally asked them to see me. Not the version of me they'd shaped, not the helper, the buffer, the executor of tasks and emotions. Me. And whether they did or didn't, well, I stopped making that my responsibility. This morning, I woke up to the smell of cinnamon and cardamom. Isabel was already in the kitchen, her hair up in a loose twist, humming some French song under her breath as she stirred something in a copper pot. It was Sunday, and we had guests coming, but not the kind of guests I used to host with gritted teeth and pre-sliced charcuterie boards and emotional armor hidden under my silk blouse. These were our people, our circle, the ones who loved us loudly, imperfectly, without agenda. Jada and her wife were bringing their dog and a gluten-free cake that always tasted like soap but made everyone feel loved anyway. Jordan was coming too. Evan wasn't, but that was okay. He was in a program upstate and we were cheering for him from afar. Even Liza had RSVP'd yes, which shocked me. She was bringing her new boyfriend, someone quiet and grounded, she'd said in a text, like a guy who uses coasters. I smiled, reading that. Progress. Before the guests arrived, I stood in front of the mirror in our bedroom, wearing a soft linen dress that wrinkled easily and clung too honestly to my hips. I used to dread my reflection before events like this. I'd assess it like a report. Hair, check. Tone, measured. Outfit. Coded for status, but not arrogance. Now, I just wanted to look like someone who belonged in her own skin. When I stepped outside with the wine, Isabel kissed my temple and said, "You look exactly like home." And I believed her. The afternoon sunlight filtered through the garden lattice in golden stripes, landing on the table like applause. It was the kind of day that made you forgive the weather for every storm. We sat around the mismatched chairs, passing dishes, unbuttoning the top of our jeans, laughing too hard. Someone played Nina Simone from a speaker tucked behind the potted basil. And in the lull between courses, I looked around. Jada, telling a story with her whole body. Liza, gently rubbing her boyfriend's shoulder like she'd finally learned how to give tenderness without calculation. Jordan, laughing with Isabel about something I missed but didn't need to understand. These people didn't know everything I'd carried, but they knew who I was now, and that was enough. Later, as the sky dipped pink and gold, Liza came to find me by the garden gate. She was holding a half-drunk spritz and the nervous energy of someone who needed to say something before she lost her nerve. "I never told you this," she said, "but when I heard about the prenup, I felt ashamed." I blinked. Why? Because you protected yourself in a way I didn't know we were allowed to. You didn't just marry for love. You married for self-trust. And I realized I'd never done that. I kept waiting for someone else to make me feel safe. I didn't respond right away. Then, it wasn't about money. It was about reminding myself that I had value before anyone else assigned it to me. She nodded, eyes glassy. "I think I confused being chosen with being validated," she said. "But watching you, hearing you speak up that night, I realized I've never really chosen myself. Not once." I reached for her hand. "Then maybe now's the time." After everyone left, Isabel and I sat in the quiet, candles half melted, plates stacked in the sink, the soft hum of a satisfied house. I rested my head on her shoulder. "This feels like a beginning," I whispered. "It is," she said, "but also, finally, a middle, the good kind." We didn't need fireworks anymore, just this, just enough. 1 week later, I received a package in the mail, no return address, but the handwriting was unmistakable. Inside, a hardcover book, The Power of Showing Up. Tucked inside the front cover, a card. "Vivian, you don't owe us your peace. but thank you for letting us find ours with you. Mom. I sat on the floor of my office for a long time, the card in my lap, my fingers tracing the words, and I realized forgiveness doesn't always look like we expect. Sometimes it comes wrapped in humility. Sometimes it arrives years late. Sometimes it's still worth opening. This past weekend, I gave a talk at a women's leadership conference. Not about mergers or acquisitions or breaking the glass ceiling. About boundaries. About self-respect. About how being underestimated hurts more when the people doing it are the ones who claim to love you. I told them the story of the prenup, of the brunch, of the private unraveling and the public choice to reclaim my seat. At the end, a young woman with wide eyes and trembling hands came up to me. "My mom says I'm selfish for not paying for her mortgage anymore," she whispered, "but I can't keep going broke to be the good daughter." I took her hands. "You are not selfish," I said. "You are sacred, and boundaries are not barricades. They're bridges to the life you deserve." She cried. I cried. Then we laughed, because crying in hotel conference rooms is somehow sacred too. A few days ago, I posted a photo of Isabel and me in the garden, barefoot, messy-haired, grinning over burnt garlic bread. Someone commented, "I thought you married rich." I replied, "I did, in every way that matters." And now, if you're still reading, here's what I'll leave you with. Have you ever been excluded by the people who were supposed to love you most? Have you ever sat at a table where your silence was the price of admission? Have you ever been told you were too calculating, too cold, too ambitious, too independent, too much? Let me tell you something. They were wrong. You're not too much. You're just not theirs to measure. You don't owe anyone proof of your worth. You don't have to trade your voice for access. You don't have to prove you're soft enough to deserve love. You just have to come home to yourself and stay. So, if this story made you feel seen, if you've ever carried the weight of being the strong one, the fixer, the misunderstood one, tell me, when did you finally stop performing? What did it feel like the first time you were loved for you? Share your story in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe if this one helped you remember that your value isn't up for debate. You were always enough. You just needed a room that felt like yours. We're not broken. We're just becoming together.